Full name, tell us a little bit about yourself and about your role in mediation.
Okay, I am Nomonde. My full name is Nomonde Patience. My surname Keswa. Well, I don't know where to begin there. I am born and bred in the rural areas of Transkei, and I started my schooling there and then went to Fort Hare University. After that, I started working. I trained as a social worker at Fort Hare. I didn't practice much as a social worker. And I went into human resource management. And that's where I worked for a number of years. Then I branched into employees assistance programs. That's where I started doing mediations. It was, I wasn't trained fully at the time. I had a little bit of training on conflict management during my studies as a social worker. So I found myself having to deal with conflicts in the public service where I used to work as a human resource officer. Then from there, I decided to go and do a master's program in conflict management in the University of Port Elizabeth. That's where I got trained in conflict resolution. From there, I went into a number of places working, went to Parliament as head of a department. Even then, I found myself having to deal with workplace disputes. So I did some workplace dispute mediation there. Thereafter, when I retired from the public service, I decided that I am going to accredit as a mediator. So I got accredited as a mediator thereafter, and then I worked in all the places that I indicated in the questionnaire that I completed. I don't know what else to say. I work as an independent mediator right now.
Thank you so much, Nomonde, for sharing that background with us. We'll get a little bit more into some specific cases that you have worked on. But for now, I'd like to ask you another very general question. And the question is, as an African mediator, as a woman doing mediation in Africa, do you think that your approach to mediation is impacted by the fact that you are an African woman?
Yes, it's definitely impacted in two ways, I think.
Okay.
One, that I'm an African woman, and an African woman of a particular age. Those three variables, they do impact on my practice of mediation. I'll just give you an example of what it is that can be, or an example of how I have experienced it. One, depending on who my parties are, which cultural backgrounds they come from. If, as an example, I am mediating a family dispute where the parties are Africans, all of them are Africans, and there are elderly men as one or more of the parties. I find that as a woman, the African men look down upon me. There's an element of being undermined. And they look at me also in terms of my age, that what will this child tell us? That type of attitude. Yeah. And if, for instance, there's also the issue in mediation where convention tells us high level eye contact is not only desirable, but is almost mandatory. But in a cultural, or if there's a dispute like the one that I told you about of African men, when you as a woman, you look at African men directly in the eye, it has a connotation of disrespect. But in the English culture and other cultures related to it, maintaining or lack of eye contact is seen as, or is interpreted as, you must be a skellum, that you don't want to look us in the eye. And all those factors then impact on your ability to establish rapport with the parties, or even if you manage to establish the rapport, keeping it and maintaining it throughout your mediation is impacted in how they view you as against their own cultural expectations. I don't know whether that answers you.
Absolutely. That's fascinating, because there we can see quite a disconnect between the Western ideals in the mediation training with regards to this idea of direct eye contact, and then the varying interpretations of that within African cultures. And so that shows to me a disconnect between the trainings and the reality of mediators out there doing work in Africa. Would you like to elaborate on that a little bit more?
Yes, there definitely is a disconnect. But you know, there are certain things that you get taught as part of your mediation training, which I must be honest, as I don't practice. I keep them in mind and I adjust them. When I say I don't practice, I mean I adjust them according to the situation that I am faced with. Like this eye contact thing that I'm talking about. If I'm mediating, as I said, a matter like the example that I gave you of African men, where are the African men? I adjust that. I know that African men don't take kindly to direct eye contact. They take it as confrontational and therefore disrespectful. So when I'm in a situation like that, I adjust. I adjust even my non-verbal communication. I adjust it depending on the situation. When I am dealing with a combination of cultures, like where you would have an African customer who is aggrieved by a service that he or she got from a business that is run by white people. So you have a white company and an African customer who is unhappy. So you have that dispute. I make adjustments in when, for instance, if I'm sitting with them in a joint meeting, particularly the first meeting, I don't keep my eyes fixed on a particular party. My eyes dart from one party to the other, not only because I'm managing this direct eye contact thing, I'm also my eye is also I'm also keeping watch at what the parties do. So my eye will dart amongst the parties, right? I'm conscious of the fact that one group is looking at my eye and thinking, does she seem to be disrespectful? Or is she, the others are looking at me, is she scaling that she's not looking at us? So I manage those things. That's one example I can give to you. I don't know if that satisfies you.
No, that's wonderful. So it seems to me like being flexible is an important criteria for a mediator, particularly a lead mediator. Are there any other qualities
Definitely.
that you think, or skills, qualities or skills that you think is important for a mediator to have?
One is the one that I said, keeping an eye on what one party is doing whilst the other party is on the floor. I don't know how you would classify that, or what word you would give that. If you are not paying attention as a mediator to the non-verbal communication that one party is giving to the other, and picking and be quick to pick things like those. That's what can impact your mediation going forward. So as a mediator, you should be able to, think on your feet and be able to pick up on non-verbal communication and what it means. You should be able to listen whilst you are reading the bodies, the languages of the bodies that is being given in the room. You must also be listening attentively to what is being said and being able to clarify for yourself and for the other parties whether what is being said is exactly what you understand it to be. So your communication skills, active communication skills are critical for a mediator. You should also be able to, skills like reframing a negative that is put across, be able to change it and reframe it into a positive language such that it's palatable to the other party and doesn't break down your process. And I think the other quality would be being empathetic. Also, what else? Be analytic. And also tactful. How you say certain things as a mediator can break down the process or can facilitate the process. Let me give an example. If, for instance, you are sitting with parties in side meetings, caucus, you are in a caucus mode with the parties. So you are now shuttling between the parties and conveying, because you're trying to facilitate this dialogue between the two parties. Then you're shuttling between them. You've got information that is critical for the other party to get from one party. How you've got to be strategic how you package that information such that without you're not sanitizing it, but on the other hand, you're not taking it as raw as it is to the other party, because it definitely will cause some ructions. So you've got to how best to present this information to the other party for the other party to understand what this party is saying without, ruffling feathers. I don't know how else to explain it. So those are the skills that I think the mediator should have.
Thank you. And in that answer there, you spoke a bit about the process, the mediation process. So I wanted to ask you, what would you prioritize in a mediation process? Do you focus more on the output or on the actual process itself?
I prioritize the process. I believe that if your process is good and your process is thorough, it often results in good outputs. And good outputs, in my definition, are not achieving demands, because the parties come to a mediation process with demands and positions. I want this, I want this, I won't do this, I'm not going to do that, I'm that type of thing, which most are realistic unrealistic in most instances. So for me, the process, if the process was good, the process was thorough, it does in most instances, it does translate into good outputs. So I don't focus on the output. I focus on the process, which I believe will take me to good outputs.
And that makes a lot of sense. And I've heard a lot of mediators say the same thing. But then my next question for you is, what then is a successful mediation? What do you feel constitutes success in mediation?
That's a difficult one. Parties go into mediation with demands, wanting this. If I don't get this, then I've not been successful. But in mediation, we know you can't achieve demands. You can't get your demands, 100% of your demands met. If that is the case, it's not mediation, because then the other, but it's a winner takes all situation if it's like that. So success is for me in many ways. One, that the parties are able to come together and talk, for me is a success factor. That the parties are able to sit down and listen to each other or to one another and understand and appreciate why the other one is aggrieved. Why did they get to where they were in their conflict or dispute? If they can listen and hear, understand, appreciate, that's a success factor for me. Because even if they don't achieve what they wanted, that they understood, why is it that I cannot get what I want? Because if I get what I want, then the other party will get nothing. Understanding that and appreciating that, and maybe even accepting that I cannot get what I want without the other one losing. So that is a success factor to me. And fourthly, that they can talk, they can understand each other, they can appreciate and perhaps accept that I cannot get what I want without making the other one lose, in a way does improve or mend a broken relationship, whatever relationship it is that the two parties had, it will help somehow to mend the relationship or even improve the relationship. So for me, all of those are success factors. There isn't one thing I can say, if I get this, then it's a success. Or if they settle, if there's a settlement agreement, then it's a success. Even if there's no settlement agreement, there's success factors throughout the mediation process, as I've explained, which hopefully culminate in a settlement agreement, which other people see as the only success factor, which I don't subscribe to. It may not result in a settlement agreement, or it may result in a settlement agreement. Still, to me, there have been successes throughout.
That makes a lot of sense. Do you perhaps have a particular mediation that was successful to you that you would like to share with us? An example?
Yes, there are many, but I'm trying to think of one example that I can say all these success factors were met up until the settlement agreement. Let me see now. Sure. Because other cases, why I'm thinking of a case where I would say there were successes throughout and up until a settlement agreement, which is, perhaps you could call it a cherry on top.
Mm.
I'm trying to think of an example now. Can we do another? Can you come up with another question? Deal with something else whilst I reflect on the cases. I can look them up and see which one I would want to give an example of all these successes, because others like the Marikana issue, the Marikana case, there was no settlement. Mm. The process broke down at some point, but there were successes in the throughout the process. For instance, in Marikana, the issue was about Lonmin, the mining company, had developed and published a social development plan, which had a number of elements: housing, education, health, roads, infrastructure, and things like those. And the community was unhappy because they considered that the company reneged on that social development plan, and that created a conflict between the mining company and the community. But during our mediation, we did not achieve everything. In the end, there was no wholesale settlement agreement. But we got the parties to appreciate in our discussions. The community appreciated what the company did. And the company also appreciated their shortfall. As an example, in housing, where the community complained that they reneged on their housing development plan. But it turned out, in actual fact, that the company did probably about 70% of what they had planned to do. It didn't mean that there was nothing at all. obviously the company understood what the 30% they didn't achieve, what it meant to the community. And also that in the discussions on that housing development, the company understood what it means to consult the community. Just because they published the social development plan or the housing development and that they were going to build so many houses, build so many whatever that they had promised to build, prioritization of all of that, they didn't consult. They didn't consult the community. So in the discussions, they then were able to understand that they've got to every stage of the project, they've got to consult and have agreements on where to begin, which community to start with, what would they like to start with, because there were constraints, financial constraints on the company. Platinum sales were down, unlike the previous years, etc., etc. So with those bits and pieces of understanding and appreciation between the two parties, to me, that was a success factor. Then we went into health. Yes, there's a clinic. Yes, there is a clinic. There is a mine hospital, but there are certain health conditions that the clinic cannot attend, that can only be attended in the mine hospital, but the community cannot get into the mine hospital for various reasons. So the parties could discuss and arrive at some understanding as to at what stage can a member of a community have access to the hospital. Once the company could appreciate why the clinic cannot attend to certain conditions, they can only be attended to by the hospital, and why the community cannot travel to hospitals outside the area when there is a hospital in the mine, you know. And then there was an appreciation and an understanding as to the community cannot routinely go to the mine hospital because it's not meant for them, but they can, under certain conditions, access the hospital depending on what the clinic does or clinic says, you know, those types of things. But overall, that process broke down because as we were still talking and achieving those as we used to call it, slow-hanging fruit, the company decided, no, we're not continuing with the talking. In fact, they didn't say they're not continuing with talking, but they kept on postponing and postponing. They are not available. They are busy with that. They are strategizing. They have a strategic plan. They have whatever else that the people who represented the mine were busy with. And that ended up with the company, with the community and the group of lawyers from vets that were working with them saying, listen here, these people are not serious. No, we're not doing this now. We would rather go to court. So that's how it ended. I can't think of any example, any other example. Maybe it's going to come to me as we continue. For now, let's take that one.
Okay, that's perfect. I think that's a wonderful example, and really speaks to some successes, particularly in terms of mutual communication and respect for one another. Then it also leads to my next question in terms of how it broke down. What challenges or obstacles can you sometimes come across during mediation processes?
The playing field sometimes is not level, right? Just like this case that I'm talking about at Marikana. You had a company that was represented by company directors or executives who were sitting with us in the mediation. They had this sense of importance. They are important, and everybody else should dance to their tune. If they are busy, if they are busy in the company, it doesn't matter that you had an appointment with them. If somehow something crops up and they are not available, then that's it. Then everybody else must accept that. That is a challenge that you as a mediator, because this process is voluntary. If there's one party that says, I'm not coming there, what can you do other than, as a mediator, you try and understand why is it that you can't come, and try and show them what effect this is doing to the process, etc., etc. But if they say so, I mean, even though the mediator is said to be the leveler of the playing field, the power broker, there are times where, as a mediator, your power broking abilities don't go far. So in that case, that broke down because the company, if they decide not to come to a mediation, they will simply cancel or postpone at the last minute, and the community just got fed up with that. And they said, you know what? These people are not serious about this process. We're not going ahead with mediation. We would rather take our chances in court. So they went to court.
I see. Are there any other types of challenges besides the level playing field? And if so, how would you overcome these challenges?
What else would be there?
You mentioned, for example, that sometimes your age or your gender can be a challenge in how you are perceived.
Oh yes. Your gender, your race, your age. Well, what I normally do, I work at stereotypes which I foresee that might crop up in the mediation process. I deal with those during preparations. I hold preparations or pre-mediation meetings with the parties bilaterally, where I explain the process, how it's going to unfold. Because sometimes other people go into a mediation expecting that the mediator is going to be a judge, that you are going to be the arbiter, you are going to tell who's wrong or right. So I prepare parties before mediation to understand what my role is going to be. And I do pick up those types of stereotypes, if there will be, by the attitude that I get, even in the pre-mediation meetings, and then I work at those at that stage. I remember I had a case that was a serious challenge for me, which was a workplace dispute in a water, what are they called now? These people who manage water supplies, like Umgeni water, like in Joburg, what are they called? Those types of government agencies. So there was a government agency in the Western Cape that there was a problem between the members of staff. Now, in the pre-mediation meetings, that's where you try to get the parties to appreciate your neutrality on the matter. But when I got to this company, one of the parties, unfortunately, I will say unfortunately, was a white woman. And her conflict or her dispute was with the CEO and the HR executive. And those two were Black women. So I came into the situation being a Black woman. That white woman immediately saw me as their chommy. So I'm coming here as their chommy to try and to bulldoze her into accepting those chommies type thing. So I had to try and work with her to appreciate that I may be Black and I may be a Black woman, but I know nothing about the dynamics of the company. All I'm here for is to try and help them resolve their problem. But that lady didn't want to hear a word from me. She even after allowing me schedule a meeting with her, when I got to her and she looked at my skin, I think that just, so she didn't want to hear anything from me. So the mediation fell apart. Now, you said, how do you deal with that? The only way I know of is sitting down with the party who seems to have a difficulty to try and understand what the difficulty is, and try and explain how the process goes and how you manage the process and how the process is going to unfold. And hopefully will understand. In some instances, they appreciate it and say, okay, I'll give it a try, even though they are not certain about the mediator's motives. But give it a try to see if the perceptions before mediation, whether they are going to be realized throughout the mediation or the mediation is going to turn out differently. But it's sitting down with the party who seems to have a problem and chat about where the problem comes from and how we can go past the problem.
So very much as you was talking about earlier, this idea of having to build a rapport with the various party members as a mediator.
Yes.
My last question to you is going to be a little bit of a tricky one. So please bear with me. What we've been discovering through these interviews is that a lot of conflict situations and then therefore the mediation, it often seems to be very male dominated. And so I want to know, would you agree with that? Do you feel that mediation is a male dominated area because conflict is generally a male dominated area? Do you agree with that?
I would say it really depends on a situation. It depends on where that conflict is. And it depends on the setting. Workplace, I find workplace disputes are dominated by women. And I've mediated lots and lots and lots of workplace disputes. And almost I can say almost 80% of them are women. I don't know whether, which is something I thought it was just my hypothesis, that probably in the workplace, men, there is this thing about men being mature men, not mature as in MATURE, but as in MACHO. So they are not supposed to be crybabies. They are not supposed, they've got to take it in the chin and move on. Maybe that is why in a workplace you hardly find men coming forward with disputes or being parties in disputes, and that to females are more that coming up in disputes and coming into mediation. I don't know. That was just my hypothesis. I don't know. It's not based on anything. But in workplace settings, that is my experience. But in community, it's both.
Okay.
It's both men and women. In commercial settings, yeah, definitely men. Men are predominantly in the parties in dispute, and commercial mediation is predominated by men mediators. But in family, I find that it's women mediators that are predominant there. Probably because in family conflicts, the men who are in conflict, probably because of our patriarchal system, they don't believe in taking their problems to a third person. They are the head. I'm the head of the home. I should be able to fix my home. Therefore, if I can't fix my home, I will just bulldoze my way through. But the females in that environment would probably be the ones that seek a third-party intervention. So I don't want to believe that in all settings where you find conflict, it's predominated by males. So I don't believe in that.
That makes a lot of sense. And thank you for explaining your hypothesis. I appreciate it. It really does make a lot of sense. In the commercial sector, where you were saying it's a lot more men, both as the mediators and the parties involved in the conflict and the mediation thereof. Can you as a woman mediator have mediated these male-dominated affairs? Do you feel that you can be effective as a woman as a woman mediator in these male-dominated mediation spaces?
I don't have too much experience of those.
Okay.
And I want to believe that the reason why I don't have much experience on working with those is because I'm a woman. And a Black woman, nogal. Because, profile disputes in the commercial sector involves, I mean, who sits in the boardrooms?
Yeah.
Who sits in high offices? It's white males. In what it's a big percentage. I mean, it's topical in the country right now that boardrooms, women hardly are seen in boardrooms. Black women, even worse. It's still like that even now. So if there's a dispute at that level in high profile cases, even if it's got to be taken to court, look at who goes to court. Who are those advocates that go to court? It will be those guys, those silks that they've long been there and are known. And who are they? They are white. How many black silks sit and deal with commercial matters? Not many. So you can imagine if a company cannot employ a black senior counsel to go and represent them on a litigation. Imagine if now this matter has to go for mediation. Say the court refers it back to mediation in terms of the court annexed mediation rules of the High Court. Do you think they will come look for a Nomonde Keswa? No, they won't. They will look for John Brand. John Brand is my coach and my go-to person in the mediation field, because he's been there, he's done that, and he's mediated high profile. So those guys will go to John Brand. They will not go to Nomonde Keswa. Nomonde Keswa, who is she? 1, 2, black. 3, woman. No. So in the commercial sector, it's one setting. I also don't market myself there, because I know it's not going to be, it's not easy. There's a glass ceiling there. You just can't break down that glass ceiling.
And it definitely seems like the patriarchal context plays a lot into that form of mediation. And also we're noticing in very high level mediations, for example, when you're looking at international level mediations or even national level mediations between countries, there always seems to be a patriarchal context and a powerful male leaders as mediators rather than women.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
And in most instances, I was actually chatting with John Brand the other day. We were evaluating the mediation that President Ramaphosa and other African states presidents are trying between Ukraine and Russia. We were looking at that and we were saying to ourselves, it's all males, well and good. And we wondered if those people, 1, are trained in mediation, 2, have got experience in mediation. Or they are saying they are mediating because mediation is a word used when you try to you know, to I don't know, to do what with the parties that are at each other's throat. But it's so casually used, the term mediation, and we thought to ourselves, they are really casually using it. But yeah, I'm actually agreeing with you. Even in those between states conflicts, the people who go there, it's all these males, and yeah, the one male talking to them. Maybe because the conflict is usually between males. It's the males that are heading those states who are at war with each other. Maybe that's the reason.
But then how important is training in mediation? If you can have, important political leaders and officials going that are not necessarily trained in mediation, I wonder how effective they can be. I mean, training must be very important in mediation.
I believe it is important because mediation, I conducted a training in Phoenix as part of Conflict Dynamics Social Responsibility Program. You remember there was a problem in Phoenix after the July or during the July 2021 unrest and looting and all that. And there was a problem between Indians and Black people in that area. And it turned out that the problem in the community is also playing itself out in the schools. So we were approached to assist the one of the schools there with conflict management skills. So we went in there and we were listening to what these people were saying. I mean, the teachers, because we were dealing mainly with teachers on that day. There was one guy who one teacher who presented himself as, I was trained in mediation during my teacher training years back, so I don't need to be part of this. But the principal said, no, it's fine. Let it be a refresher then for you. So he sat in this. But in the end, he came up to us and said he learned so much from it. Because I want to believe that it begins with the ability, like I was saying to you, that a success factor for me is being able to get the parties to sit down and talk about what matters to them. Not only talking and the other party is ready to talk, but talking to the other party and the other party listening and appreciating what is being said. What matters to me, what my needs are, what is of interest to me, what is of concern to me. If you listen to that, and in most instances, people don't even understand what is important to them until you pry, you dig, which is one of the mediator skills. If you say this, the mediator then digs more and more and more on that one little bit of thing that you said. They dig, and then as you talk, you begin to understand yourself what it is that is important to you. So that is why I'm saying I want to believe that mediation training is important because it provides you with certain skills which become important in your practice of mediation.
Thank you so much.
I don't know whether the Phoenix example did make sense.
No, that's wonderful, because now we're getting so much rich information from you as not only an experienced mediator, but a trainer of experienced mediators. It's wonderful. You're giving us a wealth of information. Thank you so much. I think I'm okay. I know I said I had one more question, one last question. That was my last question, but I have one more question, if that's okay with you, and then we'll be done.
Okay, that's all right.
I'm learning so much from you. Okay, so how do you take what you learn or experience from a particular mediation and use that knowledge to improve future mediations?
In two ways, I think. If I was a mediator in a team, like it was the case in Marikana, we are a team of mediators. We sit and debrief the session. The idea in sitting and debriefing is to what is it that happened when parties reacted in a particular way? And how was my reaction as a mediator in facilitating the resolution of that? Then in the debriefing session, we come up with our own observations of what happened. And in the process of discussing that, I learn, okay, maybe I shouldn't have done this. Maybe I shouldn't have said that. Maybe I should not have, maybe I shouldn't have done this. Maybe I should have done it this way, that type of thing. So you learn through the debriefing session with other members of the team. That's one way. If I work alone and I finish a session, whether it was successful or not, particularly if it was not successful, like the case of that white lady in that Cape Town water agency, for days, I pondered about what it is that I did and tried to kind of do some introspection. What is it that I did? Is there another way I could have done differently that perhaps could have been better received by that white lady? Then I did that, and after that exercise, I had a number of options for myself that maybe when this does not work, maybe you could try this. If it does not work, you could try this. And then from there, I took it to conflict dynamics has a panel of mediators. Once in a while, we will come together and role play some of the cases that we've dealt with. I took that case into the role play because I wanted my colleagues to critique what happened there. So that is one way, and then I learned from that. Yeah, that's basically how I do it. If I don't take it to a role play, then I would go to people like John Brand or Felicity Stetman or Marion Shea or Zetu, the guys that I work with, and say, hey, good people, I had a case like this today. Of course, confidentiality maintained. So no names, no this, but the scenario, put the scenario and say, this is what happened. How would you have dealt with this? And then I would get different responses. And then I would learn that, okay, maybe I shouldn't have approached it this way. I should have approached it that way.
It seems like in many things in life, part of being a mediator is constant introspection and learning and growing just as a human being. I've really appreciated you sharing all of that and interacting with others.
And interacting with your colleagues also. Interacting with colleagues having regular, meet and discuss or chats or this. I have a case like this, and these are the things that are coming up, and I am stuck now. I don't know how to proceed. Help me out. I mean, there's nothing wrong with asking people to help you out.
Of course not. And having those networks of support is so important.
Yep.
Nomonde, is there anything that you would like to share with us? One last thought or anything you want to share before we finish today?
Oh, what now? Hey, you caught me now. No, I can't think of anything right now. Oh, no.
Not to worry. You have
No.
really shared so many wonderful experiences and such a wealth of knowledge with us today. I really, really appreciate it.